Have you ever felt something break inside you at the very moment you were supposed to feel the most pleasure? Not in your heart, not in your mind, but deeper, so deep that it shakes something fundamental within your being. That strange electric pause between desire and fear, the moment when you realize you control nothing, not even yourself. You shiver not because of the skin you touch, but because of what that skin awakens inside you, what it unearths from the depths of your unconscious. I want to take you there, into the heart of what truly happens when a man faces himself at the height of intimacy. Not the lover, not the conqueror, not the confident figure who believes he has mastered desire, but the man stripped of his masks. The man who finally stops acting and sees his own reflection in the other's eyes during an act that is often mistaken for mere pleasure, but is, in reality, something far more profound. We are conditioned to believe that intimacy is only about bodies. And yet, what stirs beneath the surface, the trembling, the vertigo, the fear that comes with surrender is far more revealing than any moan, any touch, any gasp. It comes from the shadow, that hidden part of you that whispers truth in silence. The part of yourself you have denied, buried behind a carefully constructed persona, and when the body surrenders, the shadow awakens. At that moment you are no longer a man playing a role. You are a child again, exposed and trembling, caught between desire and the fear of disappearing into the other. And it's terrifying, because for the first time you realize that intimacy is never about possession. Never about dominance, it is about confrontation. Confrontation with your own truths, with your hidden fears, and with the desperate need to be seen. And what is it that the shadow demands? Recognition. It is the silent echo of every suppressed emotion, every unspoken desire, every wound you have carried without acknowledgement. It does not care for performance. It does not feed on the applause of conquest. It feeds on truth. I remember the first time I felt it. I thought I was just experiencing desire, passion, pleasure. But as the act unfolded, I felt something else, a sudden, almost unbearable emptiness. Not physical, but psychological. A hollowing in my chest, a tremor through my soul, as if something inside me had been unearthed and left there to confront itself. In that silence, I was no longer the confident man I had always presented. I was a fragment, a shadow of what I had ignored for so long. And yet, that fragment was alive, awake, demanding my attention. Carl Jung once said that everything that is not made conscious manifests as fate. And that moment of vulnerability, when the shadow rises during intimacy, is one of the most visceral proofs of that truth. Desire becomes a mirror, reflecting the parts of you you have tried to ignore. Every act, every encounter, every fleeting pleasure becomes a doorway to self-recognition or self-denial. And if you choose to look, if you dare to stay present, you begin to see the patterns of your life reflected in the touch, the breath, and the silence after. Most men, however, do not stay. They flee from this recognition. They seek repetition, more bodies, more intensity, thinking that excess will silence the echo. But the shadow is relentless. The more you ignore it, the louder it becomes. It begins as discomfort after pleasure, then turns into unease, and eventually into a gnawing emptiness that cannot be filled by desire alone. This is the paradox of the modern man. He confuses desire with identity, thinking that what he seeks is pleasure, when, in reality, he is searching for meaning, for acknowledgement of his own soul. Intimacy is not about undressing the body, it is about undressing the mind. And the mind, as Jung teaches, carries the weight of our shadows. Our insecurities, our fears, our longing for acceptance all come to light in the most intimate moments. When a man stops performing, when he stops trying to be admired, when he stops hiding behind control, he is faced with something unbearable, yet liberating. the truth of himself. There is a moment immediately after climax when silence becomes unbearable. There are no words, no gasps, no familiar reassurances. Only the raw presence of the self, reflected in another's eyes or in the quiet that follows surrender. That emptiness is not a void to fill with more pleasure. It is a mirror, showing you the aspects of yourself that you have long denied. Vulnerability is revealed, and with it a profound insight. Your soul seeks to be recognized, not just by another, but by yourself. In these moments I have felt the child I once was, unprotected and raw, staring back at me. That child is neither ashamed nor guilty. He simply exists, reminding me that intimacy is not conquest, not dominance, not ego. It is surrender, and true surrender requires courage, the courage to face yourself, to acknowledge your shadow, to recognize that what you have long called weakness is in fact the path to your deepest strength. Many men never reach this understanding. They mistake intensity for presence, volume for connection, movement for growth. They leave encounters with satisfaction in their body, but emptiness in their soul. Jung would argue that this is because they have not integrated their unconscious, have not faced their shadows, have not allowed themselves to experience intimacy as a dialogue between all parts of their being, the light, the dark, the hidden, and the seen. I have learned that true intimacy is not about bodies. It is about identities, about the dance between desire and fear, about allowing the deepest parts of yourself to be acknowledged. The shadow, the suppressed, the unspoken, all of it emerges when you dare to stay present. And it is not always comfortable. It can be violent, chaotic, almost unbearable. But it is necessary, because what you encounter is not just another person, it is yourself reflected in the flesh and energy of another. Every touch becomes a silent prayer. Every embrace a negotiation with the self. Every whisper a dialogue with what has been hidden for too long. And when this is recognized, when it is embraced, the act transforms. Sex ceases to be a game, a performance, a measure of conquest. It becomes a space where the soul is revealed, where identity is reconciled, where the man discovers that he is not seeking pleasure alone, but redemption, acknowledgement, and wholeness. The more I have allowed myself to be conscious in intimacy, the more I have realized that energy transfers, not just between bodies, but between souls. Every encounter leaves traces on the unconscious. That lingering sensation, the feeling that part of you remains in the other, is not fantasy. It is soul transference. Jung would say it is a meeting of shadows, a negotiation of identity. And once this is understood, the way you experience desire changes. It is no longer a tool for control, no longer a mask to hide behind. It becomes a language, a communion, a reflection. And this reflection is often unsettling. There is fear in recognizing your own shadow in the eyes of another. Fear in seeing your vulnerabilities, your insecurities, your half-healed wounds mirrored. But there is also liberation, because acknowledging what you have denied allows you to integrate it, to see desire not as a distraction, but as a messenger, not as conquest, but as recognition, not as escape, but as encounter. I have seen men freeze in these moments, not because of their partner, not because of the act, but because they face themselves fully, stripped of pretense. And yet, that confrontation is the key to transformation. The man who allows himself to feel without fear begins to understand that pleasure is not the end, it is a path, a means, a doorway to his own consciousness. Every caress, every glance, every whisper becomes a negotiation between the ego and the soul. And when he steps through that door, he is no longer performing. He is becoming. True intimacy, I have learned, is not about seeking validation. It is about presence. Presence without pretense. Presence without expectation. Presence in which the body becomes a mirror of the inner evolution. Every gesture, every touch, every sigh carries meaning. Desire is no longer a tool, but a language of recognition, of acceptance, of self-revelation. And yet there is danger in this awareness, because once you see your shadow, once you recognize the truths you have long denied, you can no longer return to illusion. Desire no longer serves as a distraction. Pleasure is no longer an escape. Every encounter becomes a mirror, every union a test of presence and awareness. And in that awareness lies freedom, not comfort, not control, not mastery. Freedom that comes with silence, reflection, and confrontation. Jung said that the shadow seeks integration. It does not vanish in avoidance. It manifests in behaviors, reactions, compulsions, fears, and anxieties. And the deeper you look, the more you realize that what terrifies men is not the vulnerability of love, but the vulnerability of self-recognition. That in loving, in surrendering, in being seen, you face yourself, and in that reflection, there is no refuge, no mask, only truth. And so, intimacy becomes a paradoxical teacher. It is pleasure and revelation, fear and liberation. It is chaos and reconciliation. The act strips the ego, exposes the shadow, and offers the chance for redemption. It teaches men that true strength is not in control, but in the courage to feel fully, to be present, to meet the abyss inside without fleeing, to acknowledge the child, the lover, the wounded, the eternal seeker within themselves. I have come to see that this is the essence of conscious intimacy, that the body is merely the vehicle, and the soul is the destination, that desire is a messenger, pleasure a revelation, and vulnerability the bridge to awakening, that every time a man gives himself fully, he touches not just another, but himself, that the marks left behind are not of loss, but of transformation. And here lies the final revelation. Intimacy is not about being completed by another. It is about discovering yourself in another, about losing fragments of what you thought you were, only to uncover the parts you never knew existed, about learning that love and desire, when conscious, are sacred exchanges, energetic, spiritual, psychological, and that every encounter carries the potential for evolution. Because in the end, the greatest act of courage is not in conquest, but in surrender, in allowing yourself to be seen completely and unapologetically, in touching and being touched, not just physically, but in the depth of your consciousness. And when this is embraced, the silence after pleasure is no longer empty. It is a testament, a reminder that you are alive, awake, and real. And if you've made it this far, something has shifted inside you, not because of the words themselves, but because you recognize them as mirrors of your own truth. You were not looking outward, you were looking inward. And that recognition, though uncomfortable, is the first step to freedom, the first step to knowing yourself fully, the first step to conscious intimacy.